So hello and good morning and welcome to Arctic Game Talk. My name is Johan Linder and this is my colleague
Kristoffer Wiker.
So nice to have you here.
Yes.
So we'll start off with some local Arctic Game Lab news.
Yes. So for this fall, we're going to have a back-to-school game jam at the weekend of the 17th and 18th of September. It's going to be focused about an introductory approach to game design. So we hope to see all of you there.
Yeah, sounds great. And we also have another participant from the project with us today. We have Susanne Marklund. Welcome, Susanne.
Hi.
Hi. So you've been a part of building Arctic Game Lab from close to the beginning. What are you doing in the project?
Well, I'm one of those background roles to make sure that you follow the aims and targets of the project and that it's reported well to the financiers. Basically, that's my role.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. And you also work with something called Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs.
Yeah. I'm one of the Swedish coordinators for the Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs program, so I asked to be here today to tell you about this program and hopefully I can inspire some of you to participate.
Yeah. So I think we have a video. Should we roll it?
No, I want to talk first.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to tell you that the Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs program supports entrepreneurship, the start of new companies, and business connections in Europe. This is done by forming partnerships between an experienced entrepreneur, that is somebody who's already done this journey, who will be a mentor to a new entrepreneur or somebody who wants to be an entrepreneur. Because when you want to start a business, you have probably a lot of things to wonder about and how am I going to do this or that? How will I sell my products? What about legal issues? How do I lead a team? How do I lead a team if somebody is working from another country? How do I find financing? How do I manage my budget? All these kind of entrepreneurial issues. And a mentor can help you with all these, and they can be an efficient way to find your answers. The Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs program funds travel and living expenses for the new entrepreneur to go to the mentor's country to work side by side with the mentor and learn all these things. In return, the new entrepreneur might have skills that the mentor needs in his companies, new fresh ideas, another cultural aspect on things, whatever. The idea is to find a partnership that has a clear win-win for both. And to give you just an idea of what it's actually about, more than I can tell you, I want to show you a video from Erikas, who has done this.
Hi, my name is Erikas. I am from Lithuania, currently in Fulda, Germany for 2 months. And I'm lucky enough to be here because of the Erasmus program for young entrepreneurs. I'm here to gain more insight and knowledge into the photography business. And I'm lucky enough to get this insight from Chris, one of the best photographers in Fulda.
Hi, my name is Chris, and I'm from Chris Photography, and I'm also the host entrepreneur of Erikas. And the next 2 months I'm going to show Erikas the business side of photography.
The program definitely answered my thoughts because I learned so much in such a short amount of time. Let me tell you some examples. Number one, when running a business, you have to be professional. You can build a reputation for yourself, just like ice cream has a reputation for being delicious. Number two, networking and communication is the foundation of a photography business. Because if there's no people, then there is no business. And without communication, I couldn't have ordered this ice cream. Number three, equipment. You have to know how to use your equipment, understand how it should be used. Just like the spoon I'm using. I know how to use it and how it should be used. So I'm here at the Young Cultural Fabric. This is where the youth come to express themselves. And this is where I was lucky enough to find Ira and collaborate with her to shoot some portrait. And could you move your right leg a bit forward on the step? Yeah.
Nice.
So this program will definitely get me started. It won't get me from point A to B, but it'll definitely get me from point A.
Ah, great. Wow, these are our entrepreneurs, Erikas and Chris in Fulda News.
It was a pleasure.
Can end the movie there. Yep. This was an example from a guy going to Germany. He was there for 2 months, but you can stay from 1 to 4 months. This was an example from the photography sector. I was looking for an example from the gaming sector, but I couldn't find one. But I'm hoping perhaps the first one could be from Arctic Game Lab.
But if I understand this correctly, you will able to go to another country to spend time with an entrepreneur working with games in that country. You get paid a couple of thousand or 1,000 Swedish crowns per month so that you can actually live in that country. And you just continue working on your company during that. Is it correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And the amount varies per country, but this guy, like he went to Germany, the support is 830 euros per month to be in Germany to cover housing, travel, and all that. And yeah, you continue working on your own business idea or your own business with the support of the mentor, and you also give something back to the mentor by working in his company as well, sharing your skills.
Sounds like a great deal. How long can you stay?
Well, up to 4 months, normally. There are some exceptions for longer if you have a disability and so on, but normally up to 4 months.
Sounds like made for gaming. So you companies out there listening to this, just contact Susanne and apply.
Yes.
Yeah, I will write my email address in the chat.
Super.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. So following that, Arctic Game Talk, as you know, this is the 17th of June, and this is our last for the summer. But we will continue from September 9th and forward, and hope it's gonna then change to a Wednesday bi-weekly thing. But you can, as always, look into older episodes on YouTube if you want to. But we also hope that we will be able to start local breakfasts and similar activities by then as well.
Super. So onwards to the local news. Umeå-based company Algorix received an epic mega grant for the industry. That's actually their second mega grant they get, and this one is on $100,000. And it will be used to continue develop their software development kit for Unreal. It's about the modeling and simulation of mechanical systems with contact and friction. And it's a system that's can be used for robotics, aerospace, vehicles, heavy machines, and so on, to simulate real time. So I think it's real good that they got it, and I hope it's going to be a add-on that's going to be used a lot.
Yes, on another note, Goldtown Games, World Football Manager, has, despite limited marketing, attracted users in all relevant markets. The company notes that during the limited launch period, revenue increased by 200% compared to previous months.
Super. And then I have another guest with me today. I have Manne Öberg from Changemaker. Welcome, Manne.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So you are working for Changemaker?
Yes, future game.
And what do you do? What do you do there?
Well, I'm a sort of local manager, and I'm trying to start up this new education here, together with you.
Yeah. And I suppose you have a bit of a busy days now.
Well, of course, we are trying to fill the programs for the autumn, so absolutely.
And how many students is it you're taking in Skellefteå and Boden now?
It will be, I don't really know Boden truly, but Skellefteå will be around 90 to 96.
Super good. And I suspect you have, are the programs full, or are there still seats to be filled?
There are still seats. We are about 70% full.
Yeah. Sounds great. So I'm really happy you're here and you're starting up this. What's your feel for the coming year?
It's difficult for me to say. I'm new in this business, so I'm here to learn first of all.
Also. All right, welcome, Manne, and I hope everything goes well with all the educations and that you fill up the seats.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's it for the local news. So if you have any more local news that you want us to take, just please contact us on news@arcadgamelab.com.
So over to the global and event news. We received word recently that PAX West and PAX Australia has been cancelled due to COVID-19. Looks like every event this year will be cancelled.
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yes, and on another note, FDA, the American government agency, has approved game marketed as a treatment for ADHD. So prescription-only devices is first game-based therapy in the US that the agency has approved for any condition. And this is interesting.
And more American news. We just heard that the US game sales for May jumped 52%. Despite no new releases in the top 10, software sales is up 67% as hardware grows 56%. It's the strongest May number since 2008.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's all for the news section.
Yeah.
So I think we have our guest for the week. So welcome, Yarrid.
Welcome.
Hey everyone, hi.
So you're joining us from the UK or
Right now from Belgium.
from Belgium?
Yes.
Super, nice to have you here.
Likewise, thanks for having me.
And I think you're going to talk a bit about 3D and art.
Yes, indeed. Let me quickly share my screen as well. There we go. That should be. There we go. And oh, hide this thing. There we go. So yeah, I'm just going to give a quick talk about scanning, like photogrammetry and like some process around scanning for video games. It's mostly going to be related to character work, obviously, since I'm a character artist. So yeah, quick about me. So I'm a character artist, obviously. Right now I'm in Belgium, moving to the UK soon to start working for Cloud Imperium. Really excited about that. And I've been working at a couple studios, also in Sweden. I've worked for Avalanche, where I got most of my knowledge about scanning. So yeah, let's just dive in. So where and how to get our scan data. First off, there's 3 obvious ways. I guess the first one would be using a scan service. Probably not the one you would be going for if you are just like if you're another company with loads of money. Since usually these are like unique services, like they it's usually like big companies like Ubisoft, for example, they tend to use scan services instead of dealing with the upkeep of having their own system and having to hire all these people and everything. So that's one way. The other way is buy your scans online. This being the most known one, I guess, 3D Scan Store. Extreme high fidelity scans, lots of choice, lots of different things, hand scans and everything basically. So this is, I would guess, the favorite choice of the customers right now. Another one would be Sketchfab. Might not be as obvious, but there's a lot of people that are basically scanning anything you could find in this world, going from muffins to statues to a piece of bread to some old gates. So really great if you're looking for the weirdest things out there. Now, obviously, there's a big variety of quality on this website. For example, this is a military model, really great done for just being, this is actually done by a home scanner. So that's really great quality, but obviously it can't compete to like a high-end scan from a 3D scan store, which is a really big step up. So that's something to think about. Now, my personal favorite would be Triple Gangers. They've been building a library for years now, and they've apparently just crossed the 500 model line, and they've got this really wonderful like division across all ages and ethnicities, over all the genders. Basically, it's really great, amazing quality. Now, the downside, in my opinion, of using these pre-processed scans is you're missing out on a really big chunk of knowledge, obviously, because you just get the scan and that's where everything starts. Plus, it's obviously not unique. So it's great for personal works. It's really great for student work because the prices have been pushed down tremendously over the past years. So if you just want to get into scans and want to show a future employee, or you want to get a new skill, then this is certainly a really great way to go. Now, we're obviously here for a bit more, so I'm just going to talk about quickly about making your own scans. There's a couple ways. Like the most used ways right now would be, first off, laser scanning. Laser scanning is really great, but not for faces, sadly. It works really awesome for rigid objects, anything from like the automotive industry to archaeology, even in medical businesses, it does get used. Now, the issue with this is that it's really bad at tracking motion. So thinking about a face or a human body, you're always twitching, you're moving around a little, even when you're trying to stand absolutely still. So the preferred way right now would be photogrammetry, which is basically something like this. This is a rig we built at Avalanche. It was built together with a really great colleague back at the time called Robert Krupa. He was a senior technical artist, yes. And so we built this thing, and basically the difference here is that you trigger all these cameras in one go, which takes away any artifacts that get created by those little twitches and movement you have in your face. So it really takes a snapshot that is just that quiet in time. Like it's in just a few like milliseconds. So this is really awesome for faces. Now the thing obviously is like the quality is very dependent on the choice of your cameras, the choice of your lights. But it is obviously expandable. You can start with just a few cameras and you can expand it along the way. So the costs, the starting cost can be really okay-ish. It's not too bad. Now there's also a newer thing that some of you have heard about, which is RAP 4D. So this is where we're going more into like let's call it next gen scanning. So here you're working with video basically, and tracking system where you'll track your scans along the way in the video. There's a lot there. It's still fairly new, but this is going to change the future for sure. I'm really excited about this. So that's basically where to get your scans. Building one of these, not that easy, but very rewarding, really fun to do. And obviously having your own scans is great, like especially if you're a company, if you're on your own. It's somewhat of an expensive project, but it's really fun and really like it makes something unique. Now stepping into like somewhat of a workflow, or which programs you'll be using along the way. You'll start off by getting a bunch of pictures from a system like this, which usually would be TIFF file or anything lossless like it. You don't use JPEGs or anything like that because it creates extra noise, which will create extra artifacts in your final mesh. So after you got all those pictures, you use software like IGsoft, or for my preference, Capturing Reality. Why this one? it's just a personal preference. I've used both of them. They're great programs. They have a different pay model, so it's definitely something to look into. I even think that IGsoft is free for students, if I'm not mistaken. They haven't changed that yet. But for me, it's mainly capture reality. So going into the program, what do you get basically? You get this entire interface where you will start importing all your pictures. You align all these pictures. So there's metadata in a picture of a camera, which basically means it remembers how to line all these up. So it lines them up. It reconstructs all of this. You can reconstruct the texture, which you can see here. This is the end result of all this reconstructing. This is an ex-colleague of mine as well, back at Avalanche. She didn't mind being our guinea pig for this entire project. She's been great doing all these different expressions and everything. So the end result becomes something like this. As you can maybe see slightly, there's like small dots over her face in certain areas, like around the mouth and around the brow, the eyes, stuff like that. These are for a few different reasons. Point one, when you have a very clean face, sometimes the program like this, like Reality, has issues with lining up the images well and knowing what is overlapping, what isn't overlapping. So these dots help with tracking this for the program. Now, the main reason for this is when you are using scanning for blend shapes, which is the second most used reason for scanning. These points help you realize where everything is moving. Like if I move my lip upwards, then I want my mesh to move with that movement. So my low poly has to move with this. And the program that we're going to talk about next, Wrap, uses this input as a point correspondence. So if I have a neutral base and I put my point correspondences on these points that we have drawn on the person's face before scanning, then when she makes a smile, I can make sure that my low poly topology follows those points perfectly. So that's the main reason for having these points. So going into Wrap. Now, we've made our poly, right? So we got this mesh, came out of the software, I exported it. I did align it already in this program. There's a way of aligning high poly meshes to, let's say, a base mesh that you're using for all the characters in your game. Like you want a female to be 1.75 meters, so that's where the head will always be placed. And you want, obviously, this detail to align to that base mesh, because you don't want the base mesh to be somewhere else. You want to have a good, clean workflow. So you start off with this, and you use a base mesh. So this is my base mesh. As you can see, it's not really lining up well. It's obviously clearly a different face. So you would start by doing a wrap alignment. The first node would be the floating geometry, which would be the base mesh. And the second one is called fixed geometry, which is going to be my high poly. So you plug these in. Now, if you would press compute at this point, it's just going to start doing the craziest stuff because it doesn't really have any parameters. It doesn't really know what is going on. So first thing we can do is we can do a selection on our base mesh and plug that one in. So this one is there to do a select polygon. Usually it is just something like I will say, I don't want stuff like this to move. So I'm just gonna quickly select some stuff here. I'm not gonna go too intricate into this because it is something that takes a little bit of time once in a while. This is like the main thing that I obviously don't want to move. If I would be spending a bit more time, I would also take the eye sockets. I would take the inside of the nostrils. and I would take care of the mouth back. Well, in this case, it's the starting line of the mouth back, because I tend to put my mouth back in later, which is maybe a weird workflow, but it works for me that way. So I don't want this to move or at least deform too much, because I want to keep that. So this is why I select polygons. Now, if I go back, there's one other thing I need to do, and that is I need to make a selection of my points. So what does this do? First off, I'm going to plug in my base mesh in my high. And now I got this these two meshes, left and right. I'm going to sync their views so that they move together. And now, what is this really for? Well, basically, I want this point here to correspond to this point here, and this one here, for example. So now I'm basically telling the program, like, this is my topology, this is where I want it to be. For me, it's important that these points are placed here. Probably less important in a personal workflow, because you have a little bit more freedom, but in a fixed workflow, especially in game studios, it is fairly important where your topology flows. For instance, if I have a topology line across here, I want this one to be there always. I don't want this line to all of a sudden be here and on the next one here. I want it to be perfectly here. So with this way, I can control this fairly well. So I'm just going to quickly put a couple in. Go. The nose, for example. Start this one off here, and on the other side as well. So that's the dimple right there. And then I'm just going to put the mouth corners for now, and we'll just see what result we get from that. So once I got these, obviously, if I'm allowed to spend more time or able to spend more time, I'll put quite a few of these. I'll start doing like the contours of the lips. I'll make sure there's a selection, like I said, for the mouth back, so that it's not going to implode into itself. I'll maybe even start looking into like stuff like, okay, this I want to be nicely underneath the nose, and I'll start lining out the nostrils and everything, just to make sure everything lines up well. For instance, these I also fairly usually find pretty important, because they're where the eyebrows would sit. Once all that would be done, it's just a matter of pressing compute. It takes a little, it's not too bad. Usually goes really fast, especially with something easy like this. Really great program, by the way. It's made by a company called Russian 3D Scanner. They've basically just pushed the gaming industry, or this process, like they just put it in the next gear. Like before they came along, it was a really big hassle for at least for individuals to get hold of this technology at all. It was only possible for the big companies. So once wrapping is done, you can see that we went from a base mesh like this, from base mesh to this, to this. So this is wrapping around my face fairly well. Let's try doing ears, but I haven't gotten any points there, so obviously it's just mashed it against the ear. I haven't done much there. But the face itself, it actually did fairly well, even with those few points. We can see a little bit of wonkiness. Let me turn this one off. Wonkiness in the eye. That's because I haven't given him enough information to really deal with. I should have given him a bit extra points to do this properly. But there is a few ways of dealing with this. There is a brush node in here, which you can then by hand clean this up a little bit. But usually I actually tend to just drag it into Maya, like export this file, drag it into Maya, and start cleaning it up by hand. It's a little bit nitpicky, I must admit. But once you get used to it, it goes really fast. I usually clean, like, even if it's in this state, I tend to clean this up in like 10, 15 minutes. So it's not too bad. Like, obviously, like, let's put these on top of each other. In gaming, the beauty of it actually is that this wrap, this extra one that we have here, a lot of it we don't use anyway. Like, for instance, this entire back piece here, and even the last part of the neck, will be morphed back to this original base mesh. Because sadly, it may, like, you will use some uniqueness of the person's characteristics, but in gaming, you're still restricted by a lot of things, especially if it's an open world title, like something like Just Cause or something like that. You need all these, because you'll have a wide variety of faces. You need them all to line up with the same base body. You need them to be in the same spot for animation. So you're just gonna basically take away the ears, the back scalp, and the neckline, so that everything lines up nicely. So you'll just morph that, and what you'll get in the end, if I go to my ZBrush file, so on file, we're not there yet. So what you'll get is this, basically. So this is after my cleanup work. I've realigned the neck, the base of the neck. I've realigned her ears and the scalp. So everything, like the heads, like the skull shape, everything came back. And the next step basically would be to bring in that aligned mesh again and reproject all the detail onto it. So what you get is this messy thing. Now, let's hope this tablet works, because I usually work on it Cintiq. That seems to go well. So in here, there's this entire process you can use. Usually, you just go with like morph targets. Oh, great. So I see I already got one. Good. So I made a morph target on my new mesh, which I subdivided before I took the morph target. And then I projected all the detail from this aligned mesh onto my morph. I've already done that, obviously, because I don't want you to sit through me just projecting. Now, the next thing is that I will use my morph brush, and I'm just going to basically get rid of all this ugly stuff. I'll just morph it back to the original base. Now, of course, if you had, like, the thing with me is I've only had a 180 scan. With most detail in the front face, so even the ears were not scanned properly. This is mainly because we used a rig that was only 18 cameras, for the simple reason of budget. Obviously, if you do something like a 3D scan story, you will get like a 360 scanning rig. You don't have this issue anymore, or at least a lot less of it. But with budgets comes a little bit of restrictions and a little bit extra work, which isn't too bad to learn, because usually you'll be dealing with this kind of stuff anyway. So I get all this, it's a bit dirty, so I basically have to just get rid of all this stuff, like with the morphing. So I usually just get the ear back. Now, during this process, as you can see, I also get rid of a lot of detail. I try to keep as much as I can, unless it's something like this, which is just like, yeah, for that little strip, I can better do a clean job afterwards. So that's basically what you'll be doing, just getting rid of all these dirty artifacts which you don't want to have. And then let's just quickly get rid of this. I'm not going to do the entire thing, obviously. Let's just get rid of this for now. There we go. And then I'll just go back a little bit and I'll smooth this out softly. So there's a bit of heavy artifacts here, but I don't want to get rid of all my nice little detail either. I just want to push the mesh back in or back down. A bit like that. Let's pick one up. Do that again here as well. So it's a lot of stepping back and forth in your subdivisions when you're cleaning this stuff up. But it goes fairly well, especially with this morphing. So there we go. So that's a lot better already. You can just push it a little bit extra on the highest one. Now, I'm not too worried about losing some of this detail. Neither am I worried about the fact that there's detail here, there isn't anything on the back, or there shouldn't be, because of course we still have this here right now. But it would end up something like this, like going from detailed to clean. Now, there's a lot of ways to still deal with that, since again, I basically am after this detail, not anything of this. So the back detail, I would reproject back on from a high poly base mesh that we already have. So the base mesh that we used, the low poly base mesh that we used to project onto this high poly would also be a high poly sculpt. So at that point, we can bring it into this file and we can reproject all that detail back onto this mesh as well, and then blend it nicely together. So in that way, we got all this back and we got our new detail from our fresh scan. Another way would be substance, like just leaving it as is, bring everything in and blending the normal maps together in substance. Personally, because of the, if it is for a time restrained workflow, I would do it in substance, because there I can set up files in a way that it's all automated. With ZBrush, it's still handwork. Like I still have to put in the time to actually clean it up and do everything. It will be cleaner, in my opinion. Like it's going to be a little bit more unique to every scan, which is great. But obviously, in a studio, time is of the essence. Now, something like eyebrows are a little bit tricky. So a quick one for that is like you just go back to subdivision 1, and with a very low intensity, I just smooth all these spikes out. So just very carefully, trying to not destroy the brow itself, but just get rid of those little spikes. I would do the same on the other side, obviously, but I'm going to focus on this one for now. Do not have double work. And then I would go into the highest one and I would use some masking. Go. Masking. And it's peak and valleys. What this one does is it's gonna literally select your peaks and valleys. So it's gonna get all this stuff that is pushing outwards. Let's try this one. This is actually one of the better ones right now. So the smoothest one for now is going to be the good one. So as you can see, it's really selected all this ugly stuff that is pushing outwards. So if I invert that and I just smooth it out a little bit, and I then go back to my subdivisions, I can start playing with this. So again, with a slight smooth brush, I'm just going to now smooth this out. So this way, I can very nicely get rid of this kind of ugliness. Now, again, you will lose a little bit of detail, sadly, but again, bring it back with some extra stuff. You can use displacement maps as well from XYZ, for example. That's a very preferred method as well at this point, especially with those amazing libraries that they're pushing out there. Yep, and then one this time just to smooth it out a little bit. Now, obviously, so now you got this, you can do it again. So it's a bit of a back and forth process. There we go, again, and then you just basically repeat it. Subdivision 1, subdivision 3, number 4. It's usually the important one. And then the last one is the one to be really careful with. I tend to also use like the other options, like you can smooth only valleys, you can smooth only peaks. With something like this, it can be very useful because right now you're just smoothing across the entire surface. If you would use smooth peaks with something like this, obviously you would just push in the peak and try to keep more detail on the surface itself. So stuff like that is really handy as well. So it's getting a lot better already. Usually I go in dirty once more just to get rid of some extra stuff, but not all the way to the final output, because then it's you lose all the detail that you've been trying to retain, basically. You can also just like use a slide brush and just get back a little bit, you know, get a little bit volume back, smooth it out a little bit in that way. It's a bit of sculpting work, I guess. It's very therapeutic. I really enjoy this kind of stuff. So there we go. Like, it's obviously it's just quick and dirty, but you can already start seeing the difference between this side and this side. So this way you can get rid of a lot of these chunky, dirty details, but still retaining the detail you want to have. I'm just gonna have a quick sip. It's getting a little bit dry there. So if you would keep on doing this process, you keep cleaning up, and you might use a few like displacement maps or detail from a high poly, you'll eventually get to something like this. So basically what I did here was exactly the process that I was showing. Let me close this tab, this one, let's go to layers. So basically, come on, turn it off. So this was like the main cleanup work that I did. I've did some rectifications on the face that I felt I wanted to do, just to push it in a direction that I liked as an artist. You also tend to do this in a studio, just for the simple reason of likeness issues. People give away their face basically to you that you're allowed to scan, but getting full likeness rights tend to be fairly expensive, because most people are not too happy about just giving away their face, and basically the developer can do anything they want with it. And some people have issues with getting killed in a game for any reason possible, which I totally understand. So you tend to change up the face at least a little bit, to step away from the likeness somewhat, so that like the neighboring kids or something are not going to come up to them and like, oh, I killed you yesterday in our game, which I imagine is not too much fun. And then after that, I projected up some details, some extra small things. I got the eyebrows in because this was also for a very low poly ID. If not, I would have left them out and I would have done it with some hair cards. But this way, it's already in there and you can just take it down. So, so that would be my final high poly, basically. Now, the great thing about using the whole projection that we started with in the beginning is that now I got a low poly and a high poly from which I can basically just bake everything down. So this way, I can just like export both of these. I can throw them into Substance, and I can just start baking all my maps. I can bake my normal map, my AO maps, and I can start texturing the whole face. Now, one thing that is obviously left over is, what about the diffuse texture? Again, you could use the texturing XYZ maps, especially now that they've brought out these stat maps where you have all the detail that you can project back onto a high poly together with the actual diffuse texture. But since we made our own scan, if that's the way we went, like I did, then we obviously already had a really big chunk of her diffuse texture. Would be a great waste to just throw this away. So if you export this from this program, this would be the first step. A really messy, clearly computer optimized UV map with just all these little chunks of texture information. Thanks to Wrap, we can project this onto our new low poly. It's done by, I'll show you the node. If you go to image, it's a transfer texture. So this way, I would have connected my texture to my high aligned, excuse me, and I would basically transfer that through this node onto the low poly with its new textures, or UV, sorry. That way, you now have all this information onto your low poly, and what you end up with is this. So you can see a lot of information is brought in. So a lot of all her own impurities or her own uniqueness, like the extra details here, a little pimple here, her eyebrows, which I'll usually just paint out or leave depending on what I'm doing, lips detail, like all that kind of stuff. So the final thing then obviously is just like clean it up and make it into an actual game ready diffuse texture. Usually be doing this through Substance, like I said. Also because like mentioned before, stuff like this, the hair scalp, for example, this would be shared along a bunch of other facial meshes. So with Substance, I can make sure that every single face now has the same facial scalp. So just because of stuff like that, I tend to do it in Substance. It's quick and easy, and I can put in files that automate the whole process. There's one last thing. Oh yeah, right. The great thing as well about working with these, working with the texture that you've generated from your own made scans. If you're doing the whole blend shape thing, since you'll be making all these different expressions, like yelling, being angry, the cool thing that happens on your face is you get a lot of blood flow deformation. So if I push on my face and I do a very harsh expression, like I'm gonna push blood away to other spots. So certain spots will be bleaker, other spots will be redder, will have more blood information. The great thing about these textures at that point is that you can derive blood flow information from these textures. So when you're blending between your blend shapes, you also blend between these textures and you get some extra blood flow information. Now, if it is for a full-on game, you'll probably do it in a different way for the lack of texture space. Because if you have 150 blend shapes, you'll have 150 textures to blend in between. You'll use other methods for that. You'll actually make a blood flow map, you make a stretch map. And most of that blend shape information will also go into a wrinkle map, which is basically a map comprised of compressed and stretched information that the actor has made with his face. And it all goes into as few texture maps as possible, preferably one or two. And you will trigger all these different areas when the digital face makes a certain blend shape expression. So this way you don't need to blend between actual normal maps, but you blend between the base normal map and a wrinkle map, which leaves you with a lot less texture, with a lot less of textures, the amount of textures. So it's a lot more optimized that way. I think that would be about it for me, actually. Yeah, that's a quick workflow to get around all this stuff. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot of different workflows with custom tools in all these different studios. But this would be somewhat of a general approach with programs that are available to the public that you can get yourself. and you can start fiddling around with. So yeah, that's about it for me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, some Q&A then.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
shoot.
Please turn off the screen share.
Yes.
So that's really interesting to see. It's I rarely have the opportunity to see like how complex it is to just create a character.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating to see the work that it's done and how highly automated it is.
Oh yes, it's even more automated than this.
Yeah.
Like the whole process of like in wrap to wrap all these meshes around and everything, you can also automate. So it's on a point where you could just like press a button, leave your desk, and just let everything run.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is really fun to do.
Makes your job a lot easier.
Oh yeah, a lot faster as well. Like before I would have 2 PCs actually, and I would just have a lot of this running on the background in an automated process while just working on the next thing already.
Yep.
And then you just come back and you're like, oh great, everything is done. Wonderful.
Perfect.
If you like look at this process, what kind of studio do you need to be to using these characters? Do you see it in like indie games, or do you be like need to be a bigger studio to use all these methods?
Before this was definitely a process that required a big financial background. Like you need a lot of financial input to be able to do any of this.
Yeah.
But nowadays, thanks to programs like Wrap and availability of programs like IGSoft and Reality Capture, this has definitely moved into indie studios. Like I said, like even students are already doing this because it has gotten fairly cheap. I wouldn't say cheap for a student, but it's got to a point where students can do it as well. So for an indie studio, it's not an issue at all.
Okay.
You can build your own photogrammetry rig with a decent load, a low budget. So, and then all the rest it's just small stuff. It's a bit like Substance Painter, right? Like a program like Substance Painter has gotten to a point where paying the license is not that much of a hassle anymore.
Yeah.
So it's the same with Wrap and IGSoft and such. It's gotten fairly cheap.
Okay.
You mentioned the Wrap 4D in your presentation. What will be the
Yes.
difference with that?
I've not gotten the opportunity really to see how it would integrate in my own personal workflow, because I think it got announced like a couple of days back or a week ago. But it looks extremely promising. Like the big work has been done. Well, the big work to bring it to the general public has been done by both Wrap and the company behind Infinite Realities, the scans that I showed earlier. They've made an incredible photogrammetry rig that was able to capture 4D motion instead of just a 3D image, which is basically a 4D sequence, which is somewhat like, I guess you could just compare it to video. And like for what I see right now, it could just mean the difference between having to make an entire blend shape rig and animate that for an in-game sequence, but instead just letting the actor act it out and just wrap everything on top of that. Like no more hand animation, basically.
Yeah.
That's at least what I'm hoping it can do. But there's a lot to find out about it, and we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
Are the softwares you use afterwards prepared to use that information? Yeah,
for sure.
Cool. So if this is your part of the workflow, what comes after this?
Well, after this, obviously, my final product would be the like as always, the final in-game head, which I push into the engine with all the textures and everything that is needed to make it look beautiful in the game itself. this head would obviously be sent to either rigging or animation department, depending on the studio. It will get a quick rigging pass. They will put on the already existing head rig, or one that you would make yourself in the case of being an indie developer or a student or for a personal project. And after that, it's just animating. Like either you animate it by hand, like you start doing the old school way, or you make a blend shape rig because you processed a lot of these shapes and you want to turn it into a blend shape rig. So
really nice. I saw you mentioned you painted the dots in the face of the person you take the photo. How many dots do you do usually? Is it like
as many as I feel are necessary at that point. At some point we did obviously have a standard. I think with her, don't shoot me over this, but I think it's around like 30 or 40 dots around her entire face. You could go bananas with this. Like I've seen scans that I've gotten from studios that were just like 100 or 150 points just all over the face basically. But I tend to just grab the ones that I really need, that I feel there's a lot of deformation in the face, like obviously this wrinkle around the eyes, the eyebrow itself, like all this information. The mouth obviously moving a lot. Yeah. But yeah, it kind of just depends on what you want personally.
So how do you work with a beard then?
Oh, beards, yes. For all the men out there that are a bit attached to their beards, are proud of what they've grown over the last years. If you want to get a proper scan done, it's shaving time.
Oh.
You get rid of everything. We've had people that were very keen on doing so. They just came cleanly shaved to the office, which was really fun to see in some cases, obviously, because you're so used to it. It was really awesome. They were very dedicated to getting scanned, obviously. In some cases, if it's an actor that you really want to scan, let's just say as example, you want to scan Hugh Jackman, but he's at the same time doing filming a new Wolverine movie. He's probably not gonna shave his face for you, depending on his schedule with that project and everything. So at that point, it's basically what I did with the eyebrows. Like you start cleaning up all of it. You get some picture reference from when he didn't have a beard, or you try to reconstruct it with the beard from picture. But you basically sculpt it back the way it would be without that beard.
Okay.
So it's, if the person is not able or not willing to shave, it gives you a lot of extra work.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, like a studio to do these kind of photo shoots, what price tag are we talking? Where do you start?
Oh, it goes all over the place. Like starting with just the photogrammetry rig itself, it can depending on which cameras you put, depending on the sternness of the material you want to use. I'm sure you can put something together for just a few $1,000. Something around the range of 15 would give you something very decent. Half face rig, obviously, not a 360. A rig like something like 3D Scan Store and such, I don't even want to think about the costs of that. I can imagine they're insane. They're pretty high. Yeah. After that, it's obviously like the cost of getting those people in. Who are they? Is it your own colleagues? Then obviously you could probably convince them with some kanelbuller and just some fika basically, and they'll be happy to be in the game. If it's an actor or they come from a modeling agency, you'll have to pay a modeling fee, and you'll have to pay for the rights of the use of their facial capture. That's usually even with your colleagues. it might just be mentioned in the contract, like we've paid you for this, and you'll eventually give them some fika and a hug. But you basically have to say or sign up that you've gotten a compensation for this. To if ever anything becomes an issue for court, basically. But those would be the main costs, I guess, getting the rig up and then getting the whole scan done of the person itself. After that, it's just the costs of having someone work on it, the program costs, but that's the usual thing in the studio anyway, right?
Yeah. So now comes the follow-up question then. Where can we find you and in what games?
Well, I've started out in The Hunter, which was a game by Avalanche. Really great to work on. Was my first game ever, and I never did animals even before that, so it was really fun to do. I've been able to work on Rage 2, where I learned most of this, because we were stuck with an open world shooter, basically, where we wanted at least 100 unique heads. And there was only a few of us working on the project. So it was fairly impossible to sculpt all of them. So we had to come up with another solution, which was scanning. And that's where we built the scan. That's where I learned all this stuff, because I had to come up with a workflow to do all this. Then I've worked on Ghost Recon, the new Breakpoint game. I've worked on a few things for Just Cause for their DLC stuff. And I've worked on some VR things in the meantime at this point, now that I'm in Belgium. And very soon I'll be moving on to Star Citizen and Squadron 42. So that's going to be really exciting.
Cool. But we can't see your 3D interpretation or your scan in any game.
Your likeness.
Oh, no, sadly not. No, oh, was that the question? Yeah. Sorry, went in a complete different direction there. No, sadly not. Actually, we tried. We wanted to get our faces into Rage 2, but because of in the end the project being in such in full production and time constraints, we just kept on working and we never made into the game ourselves.
So sad. So it had nothing to do with actually shaving then.
No, I didn't have to shave. No.
Super.
Yes.
All right, it was really pleasant to have you as a guest.
Yes.
And super interesting.
Thank
and perhaps we'll see you up here in the region for another talk or something else. It will be nice to meet you.
Pretty sure I'll be visiting Sweden soon again.
Yeah. Arctic Game Talk is taking a summer break now, and we're back in September. And we hopefully have a schedule of guests that we can present before that, for the whole autumn. So until then,
have a great one.
Yeah. See ya.
See ya, everyone.